Welcome to Tyne Valley Motorhomes. I'm Callum and this is the handover of a Bailey Autograph Approach 740. So when you first arrive to your site, the first thing you want to do is hook the motorhome up to power. So your power hookup point can be found on the driver's side of the vehicle, and you get your hookup lead and you'd lift the collar, lift the flap on the van and hook the vehicle up. So couple the van up, then hook the sight up with the other end, just so that you're never walking around with a live lead in your hand, because it can be dangerous. And then when unhooking, unhook the sight first and then press the clip in, and you'll be able to safely remove the hookup from the vehicle. This is how you fill your vehicle with fresh water. So it takes a special fitting, the Bailey, so it's a wheel fitting, and this comes with the van. So you'd connect this in first, and then what you'll need is, because this is a bit short, buy yourself a hose pipe with an end that clips into here, a fitting, and then get another fitting that connects to the tap. But carry a few fittings, as there is a few different taps on sites, and a few sites have different taps. So you want to make sure that you carry enough fittings so that you can always get water and connect and couple up to the site's tap even. Once you've done that, it'll tell you when the vehicle is full, but you will have to go into the control panel and turn on your internal fill. That'll allow the water that's in the hose to start to feed the freshwater tank. You can view your levels on board and know when to stop. LPG, so liquid petroleum gas, this is your gas locker, and all your locks on the outside of the van open with the one key, the Bailey key. And then it's just pushing both catches. We've got our test bottle on at the moment, so this is a test bottle that I'm going to show you working your gas appliances inside the vehicle. So what you do is, when you've got your bottle on board, you'd stand it in the cradle, strap the bottle in the middle of it just to keep it nice and safe and secure. So strap the bottle in. Connect this pipe from the regulator to the top of the cylinder, which the pipe's known as a pigtail. On this one it's hand tighten. So all you've got to do is left to tighten, right to loosen. So it's the opposite way with it being gas. So it's not righty tighty and lefty loosey, it's lefty tighty, righty loosey. And then you turn the top of the cylinder on at the top, and always make sure you turn the top of the cylinder off before you start travelling, so it's safer for yourselves and other road users in case you are involved in a collision. Vision Plus, this is an external TV point, so if you go to a super site, carry a length of coax and you'll be able to connect to their aerial instead of using the aerial on the top of the motorhome. If you're in the lakes or somewhere where it's hard to get a signal, some sites have their own aerials where you get a good enough signal from that. Now you have your toilet system. So to operate your cassette, so again, Bailey key opens the cassette. So this is where everything ends up, and this is what needs emptied. So you'd lift your orange handle, slide the cassette out. You can either carry it or you can wheel it to your disposal point, which is normally beside your main showering and toilet block on your site. And to empty, remove the grey cap off the top, pop that to one side and press the orange button. When you press the orange button, you'll be able to pour the contents of the cassette out. This is just water we've tested the cassette with. Pour it out until it's empty. When it is empty, there's a tap normally beside the disposal point. Pop a little bit of water in, give it a rinse, pop the cap on first so it doesn't go everywhere. Give a rinse, tip out again, and then you would go in with a cap full of chemical. So this cap is 120 ml, and what you can do is you can measure your green or your blue liquid into here, or do it by eye if you don't want it to be a messy job by measuring it. do by eye, but make sure you put about 120 ml of liquid into the cassette, because this breaks down everything, and then you can push it straight back into the vehicle. With this being Bailey, it's got a different type of toilet which has a separate header tank, whereas most motorhomes are fed from the main freshwater tank. This one isn't, it's got a separate reservoir, so you need to fill it, and you'll know when you've got no liquid because you can just hear the pump running when you press the button on the toilet and nothing comes out. So what you can do is you can buy the pink liquid, dilute that by putting a bit of pink in there and the rest water, but I like to carry a watering can because I find it easier. Pop the watering can in there and then you can just fill it up. So just pour, or a jug of some sort, because then you can mix it, pour it in there, and it fills the reservoir. Or you can just pop the hose pipe in there, it's up to you, but make sure you put a bit of pink in, and then once it starts overflowing, you know it's full there, you can close it and you can lock it using the habitation key. For the Bailey key, you can lock that there, and that is your toilet flush system full. Just down behind the back wheel is your wastewater point. So this is anything that you've put down a plug hole. So it takes your dishes water, your hand basin water, your showering water, all your cups of tea, everything that you've poured down into the dirty water tank. On the way out of your site, you drive over the grid and you'd crack that open, and that'll drain off, and you always want to make sure that that is fully drained off before leaving your site, as you're going to be carrying added waste water which is going to add weight to the vehicle, which you don't need to, because it's a 100-litre tank for fresh and it'll be about a 70-litre tank for waste. You don't want to be adding another 70 kilograms of weight to the vehicle, because it's going to impact your payload, impact your fuel, and if you're loaded it could actually make you overweight. So get rid of the water when you're on your site and drive home with an empty wastewater tank. And in the winter, make sure that's fully drained off to avoid frost damage. At the back of the vehicle you do have your high level reversing cameras, high level brake light, and your bike rack. So lift the arms up, pull it down. You can fit 3 bikes on here, so you can adjust these straps along the rail depending on how long the bike frame is. Pop the straps through the wheels and tie them down onto the rails, and then all the crossbars have a bar to go in. So your crossbar of your bike would be secured by this bar, so feed them through. So the smallest one being the first bike, then the second bike, and the largest one being the last bike. And then we do recommend putting some sort of bike lock around your bikes, just so if you do leave the vehicle unattended, the bikes are nice and safe and secure on the back. So on the passenger side of the vehicle, you've got your flue here for your Aldi heating system. So that does work on gas and electric, but this flue is just solely for gas. So just make sure if you're putting an awning on the side, an enclosed one, that this is always obstruction free and your tent material's not too close, in case you are on gas, you don't want that to start melting. Underneath the bed you do have storage, so you've got your carpets there, your rafter bar, your awning winding handle are in there. So you can store your bits and pieces in there, and you do have a bit of a tray, so if it's wet bits and pieces you can put them on the tray so that you can sponge that out. Fiamma F45 awning. If the wind speeds are any more than 15 miles an hour, do not use your awning, and always make sure that you are there when the awning's out. If you go to bed or go out for the day, bring the awning in, because if not, the winds could pick up and it could damage the vehicle or the awning itself. 2 fridge vents. Your door does work off the central locking, but you do have the key if you want to access in the vehicle as well. And then come into the passenger door. So the passenger door is where you'll find the location of your fuel filler, which opens with the main Fiat Ducato key. So you can open that and then pop the diesel nozzle in and fill with diesel fuel. You've got your tyre pressures here and your tyre size from Bailey. So Bailey recommend that on the front you have 69 psi and on the back you have 80, and you always check your tyre pressures when the tyres are cold. So don't drive it down the road and then think I'm going to check my pressures, because you're going to probably be putting in more air than is needed. So sit the vehicle and then check them on the driveway or in the storage yard before you drive, and then you can make sure that you're getting the right tyre pressures. Underneath the seat of the passenger seat you do have the toolkit, so you've got a jack and a brace and a torn eye in there, and then underneath the floor in the cab is the location of where the engine battery lives. As it's a Fiat Ducato, the battery's in the floor, so you just remove this panel should you need access to the battery. But you do have your bonnet release on the side of the passenger dashboard, so you can open that up. And you do have your various fluids. So starting off this side, the main one you're going to need is your screen wash. Then if you lift these 3 tabs off, you can fully lift this cover off, and you've got your power steering fluid and your coolant to fill. Next to that you've got your brake fluid, and then you do have your oil filler and your oil dipstick for checking your levels now and again. Paint codes on this sticker here. Weight plates on this sticker here, so 3.5 ton gross vehicle weight. If you were to plan on putting a tow bar on the vehicle, you can tow 2 ton behind the vehicle. And if you want to jump start the vehicle, this is your earthen point, and then beside the air filter, if you pop your key in here, lift that up, that is your positive for giving or receiving a jump start, as the engine battery is underneath the cab floor. So once on board the vehicle, you've got your main 12-volt control panel. So when you come in the van, you want to hit your master switch and turn your master on, which is your main power switch from your 12-volt leisure battery. If you are hooked up, you'll get this little icon here, which means that we're receiving 240-volt from mains hookup. So if you plug anything into a 3-pin socket, it will work. If you don't have this, you'll just have power off your leisure battery. Next to it you have your pump, so you can turn your pump on should you have enough water on board, which I'll show you in a moment how to check. You've got your master switch for your lights, so you can turn your lights on, and then they all are individually switched around the van. And you've got your awning light on the outside of the motorhome. Scrolling through with these arrows here, you can view your water level, so you've got 20% of fresh water on board, 0% waste. To fill it, you need to press enter, and that will turn on the tank fill and mean that it'll take the water from the outside point into the main freshwater tank on board. External temperature, and then you've got the user guide, so you can press enter and you can go into there and change what you need to change. Select battery always wants to be the leisure, because the leisure is an auxiliary battery and it's designed to use the caravan motorhome side of the vehicle. You can change that to the vehicle, but I wouldn't advise changing it to the vehicle in case the engine battery went flat. And you can view the amps currently being used off the leisure battery and the volts in your leisure battery. To get a true reflection of the leisure battery charged, unhook the vehicle and it will give a true reflection of how much charge is in the battery. On this motorhome, your heating and hot water system is through Aldi. So Aldi is a well-known heating and hot water system in motorhomes and caravans. So to turn it on, press here, and then you want to press menu. You hooked up, that's the temperature that you've selected, 30 degrees. So if you press menu, you can adjust the temperature of the inside of the motorhome. So you can bring it all the way down to as low as 5 degrees and take it all the way up to the highest of 30 degrees. So that's your room temperature. Underneath you've got the picture of a shower head. This is hot water. So making sure you've got water in the boiler and water on board. This is the water off. Press the plus button and you've turned the hot water on, so it'll start to heat your water up to 60 degrees, 10 litres at a time. And should you want to put it on boost, the full bar will go black, but it will turn off the heating first to prioritise the water. So if you want the heating and hot water to run together, just make sure it's half a bar. Next, you have which source you're going to use. So you've got electric and gas. So to turn your gas on, you just press until it goes green, and that is your gas on. And the electric, you can have it on 1 kilowatt, which is 750 watts of mains power, 2 kilowatts, which is 1500 watts of mains power, and 3 kilowatts, which is 3000 watts. All depend on the amperage the site gives you. And of course, you can run the electric and gas together. Should it be really cold, you can put both on together and it'll reduce the time it takes to heat the vehicle or the water. First 20 minutes, then turn the gas off and allow the electricity to continue to heat and maintain the temperature of the vehicle and the water. Normally on most sites you use just 2 kilowatts, sometimes 3000 watts. 3 kilowatts can be too powerful, and on small SEL sites abroad you may have to use 1 because they're not as generous with their electricity. Pressing the spanner, you can set timers and things, but there's loads of videos on these online. I'm going to keep it nice and short and simple and not confuse you too much. But what you can do is you can reset it. So should it fail, you can press reset and reset the system there. And that's your Aldi control panel. So in the kitchen, you've got one electric hot plate, which is the back one here, which will only work when you're hooked up, and the red light will illuminate when this is on. Make sure that with any of the hob rings, including the electric one, they've all gone cooled before you put the glass lid down. Otherwise you will shatter the glass lid. But should you not want to use your electric hot plate, or you not be on electric, you do have 3 gas as well. Which are all lit there and working. And then underneath, you've got your grill, and underneath your grill you've got your oven. Push this panel in and it'll clip off, and you do have your gas isolation valves just to the left hand side. So this will isolate the following appliances: the oven, the fridge and the boiler. So should you be getting any trouble with gas, turn the bottle off to be safe. But if it was just one appliance and you were away and you didn't want it to spoil your holiday, you can just isolate the appliance. So these are open. If you turn it this way, it's closed. And it does tell you there, but these are mainly for when the vehicle is serviced. Annually, the technician will test each gas appliance. Storage next to it with your pull-out drawer, slide-out racks. Your plug for your electric hot plate is at the back there as well, so if that's giving you any problems, you can just unplug it. Slide-out cutlery tray. And you do have your concertina cupboard there underneath the sink, with your draining board just back here. So if you're planning on doing any dishes, just pop that over there and it'll drain any excess water back into the sink. And you do have your cover, so you can cover it, and it also acts as a chopping board, and that lives there. Two 230-volt sockets at the back, so if you're wanting to plug your kettle and your toaster in, you can do there, but you've got to be hooked up for them to work. And make sure that the kettle and the toaster isn't too high of a output, because it may trip the vehicle or trip the site. And you've got loads of handy storage above for your bits and pieces. This little rocker switch beside the plugs is your kitchen light as well. So you can turn on the 3 spotlights above the cabinet. Okay. To operate your microwave, which is above your fridge freezer on this model, to turn it on you just need to press Eco. So this is a mains microwave, you've got to be hooked up because it's 800 watts. You press Eco and you'll be able to turn it on. It'll go into standby if it's not used, so just Eco again to wake it up. 30-second increments on there and cancel on this button here. Below we've got your large fridge with a decent size freezer compartment, and this is a three-way fridge. So this is your source selector. So we'll slow it down for you and we'll tell you bit by bit how this fridge works. So off at the top, so if you were storing it you would have it off in this position. If you were on mains like we are now as we're hooked up on our forecourt, or you were at home, you'd put it on mains, which is a picture of the plug, and you'd use this source if you were pre-chilling the fridge at home or you were on a site. You've paid your electricity fees as part of your site fees, why waste your gas? Should you be travelling from a site to another site and you've had it on and it's loaded with shopping, or you've pre-chilled it at home, put your shopping in the night before and you're ready to drive off to your site, which is a good 5-6 hours away from home, you can turn it to battery. And the battery isn't off the leisure battery, it's the main feed from when the vehicle is turned on. So the engine's got to be running and it'll send a feed of 12 volt to the fridge. So it acts like a giant cool box, but it's got to be chilled beforehand. It'll just maintain the temperature of the fridge until you get to your site and either go back onto electric, or if you plan on doing any wild camping, go down to gas, which is the bottom one. This is your temperature, so you can adjust that to suit, but when on gas you need to push this in, and you've got your piezo ignition, you need to push that in as well. And this orange band you'll see starts to go in the green. Once it's gone into the green, like it has there, I can let go because that's lit on gas. So if you're wild camping, on gas, if you're on a site, on electric, and if you're travelling with shopping in, once it's been pre-chilled, onto battery when the engine's running of the vehicle. One thing I will say about the fridge is when you're leaving it and parking it up either on the driveway over the winter, or you're not using it for a couple of weeks, or you're putting it into storage, take everything out of the fridge, give it a good clean out, and then the last thing you want to do is close the door. Because if you close the door, it's got a rubber seal on and it's going to press against the frame and no air is going to be allowed to circulate in or out of that fridge. So when leaving the vehicle stood up, it's always best that on the light you push in, slide the two clips out, and that'll allow the door not to close on itself and allow air to circulate in and out of the fridge to avoid smells and mold from growing in the fridge when the fridge door is closed, because there's no circulation of air. So in the wardrobe is the location of your TV aerial. So you've got a TV booster at the back, and you'll notice that the light is green, which means it's got a signal. Should that light be orange or red, red means it hasn't got a signal and orange means it's got a signal but it's very weak. You can try and boost the signal here by altering the amplifier. If that's still no good, if you loosen the nut off and push the stem up and tighten the nut back up to hold the aerial above the vehicle that little bit more, you can then direct the aerial. So what that does is it tilts the aerial from side to side, front to back, and with this being an omnidirectional aerial, it gets a signal from right the way around the aerial. It's not just the front or the back, it's right the way around the aerial. But what I would do is look where your other motorhomes and caravans aerials are pointing where you're parked up on your site. Park yours in a similar direction, and then you shouldn't have to faff on with the aerial so much. And always make sure before you travel, you bring the aerial in and you tighten it up so that the aerial doesn't become damaged in the wind. The Aldi heating and hot water system, this is more like a central heating system. So at home you have hot water running through your pipes. In a motorhome you have glycol running through your pipes, which is antifreeze. So what you need to do is you need to monitor here. This is your glycol tank, which is called your header tank. and you've got a min and a max. Always run the system up first because it's an expanding liquid before you ever think about topping it up, because you may overfill the system. The liquid has a 5-year lifespan, so every 5 years it is recommended that the system is completely drained and refilled with antifreeze. Aldi recommend 5 antifreezes to use. I'm sure it's G12 if I remember correctly. But you can get, if you go on the Aldi website, you can buy their liquid, or you can buy 5 other which they approve the manufacturer of the antifreeze, and you can top this up. And to top up, all you need to do is take the cap off the top, loosen the top, and you can fill the antifreeze there. But you need to mix it down, so you can buy Aldi in the concentrated type, and then you just mix it down and pour it in. But like I say, every 5 years it needs drained off and replenished with chemical, not only for the lifespan of the liquid, but also to maintain the pump that's in there by changing the liquid every so often so that the pump doesn't become damaged. So where the floor rises in the lounge, if you lift this hatch and lie it back and lift this up, this is the location of where your leisure batteries are. So you've got 2 leisure batteries there. Both of them are a 100 amp hour, with the main battery fuse being on the loom here. So a fully charged leisure battery should last you 3 days. You've got 2, so in theory you can have 5 to 6 days off grid if that's what you plan on doing, if they're both fully charged. But they're both 100 amp hour batteries, so you've got a good enough charge in the batteries. You should have optimum time off grid if you plan on doing a bit of wild camping. But please maintain the batteries. Every 2 weeks we strongly recommend that the batteries get a good charge, because if you do not look after the batteries and you park the vehicle up in November and you don't touch it until next March, if your batteries are flat, new batteries now won't take a charge once they become flat, and you can damage them in the winter. So make sure that either, if you're storing it at a storage yard, take them batteries out and put them at home and put a charger on them, or if you're storing it at home, every so often just hook the vehicle up and charge the batteries, because it'll maintain the leisure batteries, because if not you will need to replace 2 leisure batteries. So in the washroom area, your lights here for your toilet. To operate the toilet first, making sure that your reservoir for your flush is full, which it is because I've just shown you how to fill that from the outside of the van. If you press the blue button, you'll get some flush, and as you can see there, it's got a bit of a pink tinge to it because somebody's put pink in there and diluted it with water, like I was telling you from outside. But always put a bit of water into the toilet before you use it, and then before you do use it, there's a lever on the toilet here, a grey one, which is known as the blade. Slide that to the right, it opens the hatch. It means that everything's going to go into the cassette, and then once you've finished, give a good flush and close the blade after use. Closing the blade after use will mean that when the cassette indicates it's full, which it will on here, you'll get 3 green lights underneath the little picture of the cassette here. It'll mean you'll be able to pull the cassette straight out of the van. If it was to be left open, the cassette's physically locked in, so it won't come out because the mechanism is engaged. Toiletry cabinet. Some more toiletry storage underneath the sink. As long as your pump's on, you'll be able to use your hot water there, and that hot water is getting up the temperature there. So yeah, that's lovely and warm there, so your hot water system is working as it should. And then behind me you do have your shower. So make sure your shower screens are tied back before you travel, so it doesn't cause any damage and noise when you're on the road. And every winter when you winterize the van, top tip, always unscrew the shower hose from the head and lie the hose down into the shower tray, and it'll mean any water in this pipe can drain out and leave all the taps throughout the van open. So you'd leave the shower tap open, the hand basin tap open, the kitchen tap open. And it'll mean that any water that's sitting in any pipes behind any of the furniture will get a chance of draining out. And then one last thing, with all your white walls, how they're glossy, shower tray, toilet, sink, use no bleachers on them to clean. Light cloths, such as a microfiber, and mild soapy liquid, so that you don't stain it and ruin the finish. And this is just showing that your hot water is working in the kitchen. So hot water is selected on the tap. Yeah, that's hot. So your boiler is working as it should and heating the water via the Aldi heating and hot water system. So now underneath the bed, this is the location of your boiler. So your Aldi boiler works like an old traditional boiler, so it's a storage boiler. So it holds 10 litres of water inside here at any one time. That's great in the summer because we don't have cold temperatures, so you can leave the water in. But when we come to the winter, so any time from November to April, we always recommend that the vehicle is drained down. And then if we're experiencing colder temperatures in the months ahead, drain it down, but that's normally your winter period in the UK. So what you need to do is just down here, there's a little yellow toggle where my finger is, and you just need to flick it up. And when you flick it up and leave it stood on end like this, it'll drain off all the water underneath the van. As soon as you put it down, like so, it'll start to hold the water. And you always want it to be fully drained off in the winter. So leave that stood up. The 10 litres in there will drain directly out underneath the van. You want to drain off the fresh water, so come in and take the plug out the tank. Open the waste outside and leave all the taps within the van open. This will allow any water that's in any pipes and any lines to drain off, because you don't want to become a victim of frost damage, otherwise it is a costly mistake to make and it isn't covered under your warranty. And then when you're ready to reuse the van, you want to shut the fresh tank, shut the waste, shut all your taps. Shut the boiler, so allow the yellow toggle from standing up to back down like so. Fill the fresh water by connecting the hose pipe to the side of the vehicle. Come in and put the control panel on and put your pump on. When you go to the cold side of the tap, you'll get a pressurised flow of water. As soon as you start going round to the hot, it'll start to cough and splutter because you've got no water in here, so it's just pushing air out the taps until you get a full 10 litres in the boiler and you get a pressurised flow out of one tap. Your system's primed. Once you've got one tap done, do the other two and then you're ready to go for the season. But please drain it down when not in use, and especially over the winter, because otherwise you could end up with a costly repair bill if the water did freeze in the boiler. So underneath the bench seat, behind your driver's seat, is the location of your power supply unit. So you've got all your trips on mains electric, and if you, for ever what reason, didn't think you were receiving power but you were hooked up, the best way to check is by tripping the vehicle. And if it trips, you're receiving power. If it doesn't, you're not receiving power. You've got your MCB breakers here, so you can break the circuit should you need to. And then underneath you've got all your 12 volt fuses, which are listed what they do, so it would be a good idea to carry some spare fuses with you. And if the fuse was blown, I'll just pick a fuse out here and I'll show you. As you can see there, the middle bit is intact. If it wasn't, it would be blown and not intact, which means the fuses are unfortunately blew and you need to replace the fuse. And it's as simple as getting a new fuse and pushing it in, and then you can carry on with your holiday. You've got your fins at the back, which are like your radiators, so they'll warm up. And there's a little switch here, which is your fresh water heater. So if it's going to freeze overnight and you're away in the van, you can turn this on and it'll stop the fresh water from freezing in the freshwater tank. The front lounge does also turn into an occasional double bed, and it's as easy as lifting the seats forward, sliding them into the middle, to fill the space with the base, and then using the backrests into here to create the double bed. One thing I will say with it having a leather finish is if you turn everything upside down, you get the flatter surface to sleep on, and it's not leather, it's actually fabric on the back, so it's a lot comfier and you're not going to stick to it on a night. So to drain off your fresh water, if you've taken on a source of contaminated water, you're not using the vehicle for a while, or you're winterizing it where you want to drain all the water out of the tanks, this here in the floor is your fresh water drain off point. So if you lift the hatch up and remove the cap on the tank, pop your hand in, you'll see a plug on a chain. You'll be able to pull the plug out. So there's a little red plug in the side. I don't want to pull it out because I've got water on board and I need to show you how your hot water works. So I'll need to keep this water in. But you would pull this out and the water will drain directly out underneath the van. And you want to make sure that this is fully drained off in the winter, especially all your water, so that you don't become a victim of frost damage. Because what will happen is the water could freeze if the temperatures plummet, and leaving that water in is going to just cause damage to the tank. You've also got your pump here, so if you're wondering where your pump is on this vehicle, it is in the next to the tank in the floor, and that's covered by this hatch just beside the kitchen cupboard.